Hi, everybody. My name is Benjamin Hein. Amanda, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I just wanted to say as well how great it is to hear my colleagues' work. Very much looking forward to this semester talking through these questions together. I want to take the next couple of minutes to introduce to you a question that I've been thinking about quite a bit, both in the context of my current work, my current book project, as well as more broadly speaking. And that is the question of how the Industrial Revolution was justified at the time that it happened. Now, I recognize that asking that question in the first place might strike some of you as some sort of unexpected. We don't usually think of large economic shifts, transformational events like an industrial revolution as something that requires our approval or consent. In many ways, economic history and largely speaking history kind of move forward and we tend to adjust to it. Many contemporaries in the 18th and 19th centuries in Europe thought about it the same way. At the same time, however, they were still intensely debating as to what the merits of a new industrial regime of production were, why new technologies should be adopted, why new kinds of workplaces should be pursued and worked in, why investments should be made in things like railroads or steamships. What becomes apparent in these arguments, and they were made not just by affluent elites or philosophers, but really by everybody, working people, anybody you could imagine being involved in this kind of history. What emerges from these arguments is that even when people don't have much of a choice about participating or not, about going along or not, they're still seeking a kind of meaning and purpose in what it is that they're doing. I would argue that applies as much to the cynics of the time as well as it does to those who genuinely did not have a choice other than to go along with the new industrial regime of production. So much of my work sifts through these arguments, which happened over the course of really hundreds of years, some of them dating back to the 17th and even the 16th centuries. I tried to reconstruct these arguments. I tried to understand their logics, their contents. However, what interests me most, and my training is as a historian and less as a philosopher, is who made these arguments? Questions like when and where and how they were first made. These kinds of questions touch on historical circumstances, the context in which arguments for industrial revolutions were mobilized. And what they help us answer or provide some insight into is two things. The first is both the timing and the geography of various industrial revolutions that happened in the 18th and 19th century, both in Europe and all over the world. The second thing that they reveal, in my view, is the profound contingency of economic development and the transition to the kind of modern economic world that we recognize today. So let me end my brief presentation here with an example from my own work. I'm currently writing a book on Germany's industrialization, which is an event that happened in roughly the middle of the 19th century, about the 1850s and 1860s. What I've discovered in my research, which involves consulting sources from ordinary people who left written documents to the letters and writings and reflections of merchants, of industrialists, of bankers, to the documents left behind by governments, officials, and so on, a wide range of people. What I've discovered is that some of the most compelling arguments and the most persuasive arguments that drove the mobilization of capital and labor for Germany's industrialization these arguments originated in a very unexpected place, namely amongst the German diaspora in North America. I could talk a little bit more about that diaspora. Suffice it to say, it was quite large in the middle of the 19th century, one of the largest non-English speaking ones in that entire period. And it was amongst that community, the kinds of ambitions it articulated, the advice it relayed home to families, relatives, and neighbors back in Germany that proved quite effective and quite far-reaching in terms of motivating people and giving purpose and meaning to those who are looking for it amidst the kind of questions that are raised when we confront a new regime of production and new technologies, the new workplace environments, and all that comes with it. Thank you very much for listening.